Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this Rig-Im-Didicom video, we're going to be discussing and analysing tech news which, as usual, has popped up over the past 24 or so hours. We're going to be starting things out with the Ryzen 2000 series. A leaked review has popped up online, and it shows a massive increase in memory bandwidth across the processor, and on top of that as well, we see, of course, increased performance. Then we're going to move over to Nvidia and the GPP, which has been a very controversial program, to say the least. Nvidia have finally released an official statement, so of course we'll be tackling that. And then finally, we'll go through Nintendo's Switch, because a new hardware revision does seem to be on the horizon. So we're going to be discussing exactly what that probably means. But with that said, let's begin. The Ryzen 2000 series doesn't require much of an introduction. It is, of course, the shrunk down 12nm variant of the Zen architecture. Zen Plus features numerous improvements. Probably the most important one, of course, is increased clock speeds, but there are definitely some other changes under the hood, and those have been confirmed with this leaked review. Now, the bad news is we don't have any confirmations on AMD's own gaming benchmarks, because those were not leaked, but what we do have instead is a myriad of synthetic benchmarks and also confirmation that cache latencies and bandwidth has improved massively. Perhaps most startling of all, we're looking at up to 32% greater bandwidth across the chip, which is nothing to be sneezed at.
So the data for this review originated on Sisoft Software and has since been removed, but there are copies of this thanks to videocards.com and other websites which have snagged it. So the review really focuses on the Ryzen 7 2700X versus the Ryzen 7 1700X, which I guess makes a lot of sense, right? Although we do also have data on the Ryzen 5 2600. On top of the changes to the actual CPU itself on dies, such as increased clock speeds and reduced latencies, we also see Ryzen 2 supporting faster memory up to 2933, and that's officially. Unfortunately, memory prices are pretty expensive right now, particularly for fast DDR4 RAM, but if the prices crash or you're, fairly affluent, then great for you. According to Sisoft Software, the level 2 and level 3 caches have remained unchanged in terms of sizes, but crucially, latencies have been reduced. So what about performance then? Well, I won't go through all of the benchmarks because quite frankly it's going to take me too long to read, but they'll of course be in the video. But what you can see is a clear improvement in performance from the previous generation, the Ryzen 1700X, versus the current new generation, which is the 2700X. Under Arithmetic Native, for example, we see a roughly 10% improvement in performance from the Drystone Long, from 301 going up to 337, and those results are similarly mirrored across the other ones, for example Whetstone Double, Whetstone Single. Cryptography sees also about a 10% boost. Now I say about because it does of course depend on the particular task, but for example hashing SHA-2 512GB, we're looking at 334 for the 1700X, this is bumped up to 375 for the 2700X. SHA-1 with AVX2, we're looking at 16.8 versus 19.2. The performance is even more profound when we're looking at .NET arithmetic. For example, .NET Whetstone Double GFlops 102 versus 122, or .NET Drystone Long, it's going from 41 to 49. It's also clear that the other winner here is the 2600, with a mixture of IPC improvements and of course higher clock speeds managing to claw its way much closer to the 1700X. Under .NET Vectorized, for example, we see .NET Single Float SIMD or SIMD if you prefer, shoot from 348 on the 1700 up to 387 on the 2700X. Okay, so let's more closely examine the memory side of things, cache and memory code latency. Once again, I'm going to focus primarily on the 1700 versus the 2700, but you can see the remainder of the scores on screen, so to speak. So if we were to look at code sequential, we are 8.3 versus 7.6, obviously lower here is better. Code full random, 97.4 down to just 88.6, and perhaps code in page, one of the more impressive ones for me, 15.6 down to 14.2. Intercore transfer, though, is absolutely insane, particularly if you look at the best results. 47.8 gigabytes per second goes up to 54.9, and the worst possible performance, 5.8, goes up to 5.89. And intercore latency sees also a rather dramatic drop. I want to examine this one just for a second. If we look at inter-unit latency for a different CCX, it's going from 136 down to 128, whereas if it's sending it to a different core, it's from 43.2 down to just 40 ns. And finally, the last slide that I'm going to read out anyway, because I don't want this to become too boring for you, but cache and memory transfer. So, if we look at level 1 data bandwidth, this is all gigabytes per second, just a clarification, obviously higher here is better. 730 for the 1700X, going up to 862. Level 2 bandwidth goes up insanely from 556 to 736, and level 3 from 284 all the way up to 339, and memory bandwidth is a slight bump from 29.6 up to 30.2. Now, perhaps crucially, and something that I said several times over right now, there is also going to be subsequent BIOS revisions which further improve the performance. So in short, the leaked performance that we're seeing here is not indicative of the final real world performance. Now, what that final real world performance could be, it could be just 1%, it could be 2%, it could be 3%, it could be more, but either way, there's still essentially more room left in the tank, which is rather obviously a very good thing indeed. And according to Sisoft, this was text once again before it was removed, Ryzen 2 is a great update that will not disappoint upgraders and is likely to increase AMD's market share. AMD is here to stay. I'll also say that if the 2600 ends up overclocking fairly reasonably, that chip is going to be an insane value for money. And I wouldn't be surprised if it really forces Intel to rethink some of its pricing strategies either on the 8600 or possibly even the 8700K.
Other leaks tell us that the chips should overclock to the mid 4 GHz range, so 4.4, 4.5, possibly 4.6 if you have a really good cooler and you do win the silicon lottery. Of course, how this fits in against the Intel 8600 and 8700Ks is still remaining to be seen, but overall I do feel that AMD are definitely on for a winner here. Well, as normal, stick with us at Red Gaming Tech for more information. By far, one of the most requested stories that I've not covered yet is the Geforce Partner Program, also known as GPP. Now, this originated in terms of a story on Hard OCP, where Kyle there made a series of allegations against Nvidia. The reason I didn't cover it is actually a couple of reasons. The first is that I was waiting for Nvidia to make an official statement, and perhaps the biggest one of all, to be honest, I just haven't really had enough time to do due diligence on both sides of the argument. But I do want to cover an update to this before I do a full in-depth analysis, because I do feel that this is a rather interesting rebuttal from Nvidia.
So what's the story here with GPP? Well, it's been a bit weird. Nvidia, once again, were rather reluctant to originally respond to this, but since then they have finally issued a statement, with the company now formally denying the allegations that companies can no longer sell AMD-based GPUs if they decide to remain a GPP partner. Really, this comes down to your perspective. For example, a company can have two ranges of graphics card. For example, let's say your name's Bob, you can have A and you can have B. So A would be AMD-based GPUs, B would be the Nvidia line of GPUs, and never the twain will meet. From my point of view, however, if you were to look at a company like Asus, and the website PC Games N makes a really good point here, at least in my opinion, it currently has Republic of Gamers, Turbo, Dual, Expedition, Phoenix, Mining, and Cerebros. That is absolutely ridiculous. From a personal point of view, and I emphasize the word personal point of view, I do wish that companies were more simplified in their branding messages. And I don't just level this at graphics card manufacturers. Oh, no. I also feel that this is very similar to issues I have with, say, Intel in its CPU range as well. For example, you have the i3, the i5, the i7, and of course the i9. The i9 for laptops is now going to, of course, be 6 cores, 12 threads, which is very different from the i9 for desktops, which has, 16 and 18 core derivatives. You've got i5s, which have 2 cores and 4 threads, but also, back in the day, i5s used to be 4 physical cores with no hyperthreading. So in one way, I don't necessarily mind there being one specific brand from a vendor, which is AMD, one specific brand from Nvidia. And I say this from the point of view of being the tech guy from a lot of friends. I have several friends who have been rather confused over the graphics card they're buying, and it's just an absolute mess. And by the way, this could also be leveled on rebrands and refreshes as well. If you were gaming back in the days of the Nvidia 8000 series, which of course was the first graphics card architecture to really feature a unified design, then that got essentially refreshed and rehashed into the 9000 series, which admittedly had a few tweaks here and there, improved performance, but essentially it was still the same thing. If you take the actual GPU manufacturer out of the equation, so Nvidia or AMD, most folks would say that they prefer Asus or MSI or Zotac or whomever, and a lot of folks will stick with that particular brand. Either because of the warranty, or because of the additional software that's available, or perhaps they prefer the design aesthetically, or perhaps they feel that they've had excellent reliability with that, or whatever. With that said, I don't necessarily like GPP, because there are certainly a lot of incentives. For example, they will help promote the partner brand across the web on social media and events and so on, and plus as well you get early access to innovations. They work more closely with the engineering team. I know it may not be a popular opinion from my own, but I'm somewhat on the fence with this one. And the bottom line is, I've not read the terms and conditions myself of what AIBs are being asked to sign. Does that mean I side with Nvidia and GPP? Not necessarily either. Before I make my mind up on this one, I want more information to be released, and quite frankly, I doubt one of their partnership agreements is going to be leaked on the internet. So I'm going to pass the question on to you guys instead. What do you think? Now that Nvidia have flatly denied these allegations, what do you reckon? I mean, do you think it's anti-competitive? Would you like to hear more information before you make a decision? Ultimately, the big thing for me is that we don't know what pressure, if any pressure, is going on behind the scenes here. And I'm going to freely admit it, I don't have a brand deal with Nvidia. They do not send me graphics cards. When I review a graphics card which is Nvidia branded, there's one of two ways we've gotten that. One, we've purchased it from our own money, or two, another partner, for example Zotac or MSI or whomever, have sent us that card specifically for review. So whatever I'm saying here is my own opinion. I don't have any dealings directly with Nvidia. You know, maybe 3 or 4 months or 5 months or 10 months or 20 months into the future, maybe that will change, but for right now, it is what it is. But once again, on the subject of full disclosure, we have worked directly with AMD in the past, and we will probably continue to do that. Ultimately, affiliate marketing deals are not uncommon, so this is going to be one of those times where I would highly suggest that you do your own research on this and buy according to what you believe. Right, I don't need to record the Nintendo one, as I did it all on camera.
So, there's a new Switch revision, everybody. Yay! We're going to see double the RAM, right? Massive increased performance on the GPU. Double the amount of CPU cores, right? Probably not, actually. So, there was a rumor that popped up a couple of days ago. So for those who don't know, hackers have actually managed to open up the Switch to the potential of either backup games or homebrew. And Nintendo don't have a particularly fond policy when it comes to this stuff. So most likely what we're seeing here isn't a new SOC for improved performance. Instead, this SOC is designed to patch the vulnerability that hackers have discovered. So what does this mean? Well, quite simply, if you want to be able to play homebrews on a Switch, you will need to pick up an older revision of a Switch. Newer Switches simply, in theory at least, won't have this vulnerability, so unless hackers manage to discover yet another way to actually access the facilities that allow homebrews or whatever else to run and bypass the security of the system. This is simply going to be a checkmate situation. It's very unlikely that Nintendo will officially comment on Mariko. The company are pretty cagey when it comes to hardware revisions as a natural cause, but I will say that there is a few other possibilities as well that we might see thrown in with this. Possibly improved battery life could be one theoretical addition, or perhaps we'll see a slightly cooler running system. But ultimately I feel that the main purpose of this revision will once again be to patch the vulnerability that is found within the SoC of the Switch, of the Tegra SoC, so that backups will no longer be able to run and you will not be able to, say, run homebrews on your Switch as well. With all of that said, hopefully you have enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.